Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1997 Chrysler LHS. Up front is a 3.5 liter V6, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this LHS because this helps me along my journey of trying to film every forgotten normal car that is still in existence. The LHS wasn't anything terribly special. It was the flagship vehicle from Chrysler at the time, but it was pretty normal, and so no one really thought to save them from the 90s. So here in 2023, it's kind of hard to find them. So I am excited to be showing you this example today. It's a very well kept example as well, so we're gonna have a lot to talk about. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form, takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you, and you would get a video of your car, just like the one you're watching now of this LHS. But let's get back to that 3.5 liter V6 under the hood. Well, the main talking point is that it makes 214 horsepower, which is actually a pretty good number given its competitors. A similar year Ford Crown Victoria made around 210, and that had a V8. Well, this has a V6 and is making more power. So in terms of its competition, that's actually pretty decent. It is basically a modified dual overhead cam version of the 3.3 liter that was found in like minivans and such at the time. So it wasn't a completely new engine for the LHS, but Chrysler knew what they were doing, at least in that department. The department that they didn't know what they were doing in is the transmission. This has the 4-speed automatic that is notorious for, well, leaving the party early in a sort of Irish goodbye fashion. These transmissions are very unreliable. They're not good at all. And so that ended up being the Achilles heel of the LHS and what put a lot of them into junkyards. People don't want to put several transmissions into their car. And there are people that drove these up into the hundreds of thousands of miles and been fine. There's also people that have blown them with only a few hundred miles on the clock. So it's kind of a sticky situation. Will you get a good one? Will you get a bad one? I don't know. But unfortunately, for the most part, they were mostly bad. Last but not least about the drivetrain of the LHS is that it is front-wheel drive. Even though the engine is mounted longitudinally, it's still front-wheel drive. So how does it feel to drive the LHS? Well, it's actually a very comfortable and very luxurious experience. Like I mentioned at the top of the video, this was Chrysler's flagship top model vehicle at the time, so it certainly drives like one. Now, the LHS was a little bit more European-oriented. They want to kind of mimic the driving feel of those cars, so it does have a little bit sportier suspension than, say, Cadillac or even Lexus at the time. So definitely not the floatiest in the world, but still a very comfortable and relaxing experience. The steering is a little bit tighter than most luxury vehicles of the era, but again, not super heavy. Visibility is good, and overall, I'm having a very pleasurable experience. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is my fuel. Then in the center, we get the tachometer and speedometer, sort of sharing a Venn diagram of gauge. And off to the right, we have our coolant temperature. On the steering wheel, we have our cruise control options to the upper left and right, as well as our horn buttons down below. This is a dual spoke steering wheel with really low slung grips, again, sort of reiterating that cruiser comfortable mentality. Off to the left, we have our headlight switches and gauge dimmer switches, and then moving onto the door, although it looks to be a part of the dash, it's actually on the door. Up top, we have our power mirror adjustments, climate control vent, lock and unlock, window locks, and our power windows. This is where you're gonna really start noticing the build quality of Chrysler in this era. It's a little creaky, little squishy, even in this well-kept example. Moving into the center, we have our message center. So this is actually where you'll find your warning lights for the vehicle. As opposed to in the gauge cluster, you know, the 80s and 90s, as warning lights became more and more normal, companies didn't really know where to put them. Most put them in the gauges, and that's where they're mostly found here today. But Chrysler said, hey, we'll put it right in the center. Kind of an interesting choice. Then we get 3 symmetrical climate control vents along with our traction control on and off button to the left. Interesting to see that. And then moving down below, we have the radio. This is the factory radio for the Chrysler LHS, and I love it with my whole heart because this is the same radio that came in my 98 Dodge Ram, a vehicle that I grew up with and was my first car. I remember sitting and seeing that green hazy light staring back at me in the face as I rode in the middle seat of my dad's pickup. So I love seeing that original Chrysler radio. Really brings back a lot of nostalgia. Down below, however, we do have the climate controls. These were different in my Dodge Ram. But we have auto, fan speed, temperature, and where to send it. Really nicely laid out, very simple, and I like the look of it quite a bit. Then we do have a 12-volt outlet, little cubby space for coins or whatever you want. And then we come to the shifter. I was honestly surprised to see a center mounted shifter here in the LHS. I would have assumed that this got a bench seat, but it actually doesn't. So that was kind of an interesting discovery that I made earlier this morning. However, moving up the center console, we do have pop-out cup holders. So we will do a big friggin' bottle test here in the Chrysler LHS. And it doesn't pass. Almost no pop-out cup holders do, unless we're talking about like Lexus LS430, something like that. These fail. They're very brittle, and I'm not going to test the waters, but you can just see with your own eyes. It is not a passing vehicle. Then we do get a center console and the seats. The seats are power adjustable, which is very, very nice, and they are really comfortable. As soon as I sat in, I said to the owner, Tom, I said, oh yeah, I like this a lot, and that's mostly because of the seats. They really add an extra level of cushion and comfort that A, we don't really see much of anymore in modern cars, but B, just really treat me well. I got a bad back at the moment. I pulled a muscle, twanged something, and these seats are definitely helping me out today. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, so we're in the back of the 1997 Chrysler LHS, and this is where the LHS really starts to take its luxury car form. Now, up front, they did push the front steer wheels out a little bit more to give you a lot more extra space. They pushed the firewall up as far as they could, even with that V6, to try to give you dashboard space, all that. But really, back here is where it really excels. I have my feet are flat on the floor, my knees are straight up, and they are not hitting the seat, and this is my driving position. Very, very comfortable, very luxurious. On brand, at least in terms of size and comfort, with the Lincoln Town Car of the same era, the Cadillac Fleetwoods of the same era. That sort of feeling back here. Now, does the Fleetwood have 2.5 more inches? Sure, probably, but honestly, me being a big guy, I'm not even noticing that, which is fantastic to see. I do get a center console, which is just a giant foam brick. I do get climate vents back here, an often overlooked feature that I love seeing. And I do have a little slider where I could turn it on and off. So overall, the back seat of the LHS is a strong, strong win, and you'll love to see it. Let's hop out. We'll take a quick look at the giant trunk, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, we're on the back of the LHS, and we do have a popper on the key fob, but funny enough, it says press twice, not a 2X, not a 2 logo. It just says press twice. Funny to see that. That does pop the trunk up, and once we come back here, we'll lift it up the rest of the way, and as you can see, it is a gargantuan trunk. Tons of flat loading space as well. Love to see that. Nothing really crazy feature-wise beyond that, but I mean, look at that. I mean, that's a pickup truck bed in some nations, so absolutely love the amount of space that you don't love the sound of that Impala. Oh my gosh. Anyway, love the backspace of this LHS. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and this is a little bit of macaroni styling. I don't think it's very outwardly super handsome, but it does have that warm nostalgia with me. I used to see these all over the place, and now not so much anymore. I think it's a little interesting, although the exterior looks really do play a part into my final thoughts and sort of the history of this vehicle. I'm not over the moon about it. However, it is so much better than the second gen LHS. Miles and miles and miles better than what came later in 1999. So, to me, this gets a pass today. However, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a Chrysler LHS from 1997? Well, personal thoughts real quick. Incredibly cool. I love driving these, and I love driving cars that just aren't seen all that much anymore. It's driving a piece of everyone's history. Everyone had a neighbor or someone that owned or drove one of these cars, whether it be this or something else on the LH platform. And so I was excited today to get to show you in full HD a car from your memory, a car from your nostalgia. And hopefully this gives you that warm, fuzzy feeling that nostalgia tends to do. But let's talk about the LHS as a whole. Well, to understand that, we have to take a look at Chrysler in the 1980s. Chrysler was down on their luck in the early 80s. They're basically down on their money, if we're being honest. And so Chrysler, with the help of Lee Iacocca, invented the K platform, which was a platform of car that was able to be adapted and modified to several different bodies, so Chrysler could sell several cars that were really just the same underneath, cutting down on production costs. This worked out really, really well, and I've driven a handful of K cars that you'll be seeing across the screen now, but this was under the lead of Lee Iacocca. However, in 1985, Ford unveiled the new Taurus, and this radically changed vehicle design overnight. It was curvy and not boxy like nearly every car had been before it. So Chevy quickly responded with the W body in the late 80s to sort of capture that same aerodynamic look and feel that buyers were now looking for. However, over at Chrysler, Lee Iacocca didn't really like the curvy body style, and so they kept making cars in their boxy ways. Take a look at this 1989 Chrysler New Yorker that I drove. This car looks allergic to the word aerodynamic. However, in 1992, Mr. Lee Iacocca, who did a lot of good, retired from the Chrysler Corporation. He threw in the towel and said, "You've got it from here." And as soon as they did that, Chrysler said, "Thank you for your service and your work, Mr. Iacocca. We will now make our cars curvy." And that's exactly what they did. This car debuted in 1994, so after a couple of years of planning and design, it was ready for the streets, and this is what we got. Curvy, aerodynamic, unlike Chrysler had been making before. And so they actually started something called the LH platform, which also the Dodge Intrepid, the Concorde would later ride on, vehicles like that. And thus it started the new era for Chrysler. Chrysler finally entering the modern era, if we're being honest. So all of that was good and fine, but I'm really hung up on one thing. Why did they call this the LHS? They later, and after the second gen, renamed it to the Concorde, which made a lot more sense. But from everything I've read and could tell, no one really knows what LHS stands for. Now, of course, this is built on the LH platform. People have speculated that it means LH platform sedan, but most, if not all, of the LH cars were sedans. I know the Intrepid was a sedan and the Concorde was a sedan. And of course, people have theorized left home stranded because of the transmission, Last Hope sedan because Chrysler was sort of on interesting times in the era. I don't know. If you have your guesses of what LHS stands for, please leave it in the comments down below. But driving it here today, it's actually quite a lovely driving experience. I've really enjoyed my time with the LHS, but I just know that that transmission is a ticking time bomb. And one of these days, this car is going to see the same fate that all of its platform mates received before it. A cold, unforgiving crusher out in the middle of a field. But until that day comes, we're going to drive the LHS. I'm going to love the LHS. And you're going to get some sweet high-definition footage of the LHS. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Tom for letting me take out his LHS. This is a new purchase for him, as well as I've reviewed a bunch of his cars in the past. I believe this is the 5th car I've driven from Tom. So huge thank you to him. Huge asset to the channel. Always wonderful to work with. And I look forward to reviewing whatever he picks up next. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.